The fear married men hide when they feel attracted to you. Carl Jung. Have you ever noticed that look? That moment when a married man looks at you in a different way and then quickly looks away, as if he's been caught doing something forbidden. There is a visceral fear hidden there, and this fear reveals much more about the male psyche than any words could express. The truth is disturbing. When a married man is attracted to another woman, it's not just guilt that eats away at him inside. There is a deep psychological terror that he will never admit out loud, not even to himself. It's a fear so primal and devastating that it can lead you to contradictory behaviors, sudden distancing, or even inexplicable hostility. This fear is not about you. It's about something much darker that he sees reflected when he looks into your eyes. And what you're about to discover is going to completely change how you interpret male behavior forever. A. The mirror he doesn't want to see. When a married man is attracted to another woman, something devastating happens in his mind. He is forced to face who he has really become. This attraction works as a relentless mirror that reflects inconvenient truths about his life, his choices, and especially about the man he used to be before marriage. The fear here is not of the attraction itself, but of what that attraction reveals. He realizes that there is still within him a man capable of feeling intense passion, genuine curiosity, and desire for conquest. Feelings that have been gradually numbed by the marital routine. This discovery is terrifying because it questions the narrative he has built about himself, that he is satisfied, complete, and fulfilled in his marriage. When you come his way, representing unexplored possibilities and a version of himself that has been left behind, he is confronted with a brutal question. How much of my current life was conscious choice, and how much was just accommodation? This questioning reaches the core of his masculine identity. He begins to wonder if he married for true love or for social pressure, if he built the family he wanted or just followed the expected script. The terror increases when he realizes that you awaken in him characteristics that he believed he had lost or overcome. Spontaneity, lightness in conversations, the desire to impress and conquer, all this resurfaces uncontrollably. It's as if a younger, more alive, more authentic version of himself has woken up after years of hibernating. And that's scary, because it means admitting that he's not living fully, that there's an essential part of his masculinity that's been sacrificed on the altar of stability. This mirror also reflects something even more disturbing. The awareness that he has made a definitive choice. Marriage represents a chosen path and all other untraveled paths. Seeing you is like concretely visualizing one of those alternative roads that he abandoned. And the more attractive you look, the more painful the realization of what he possibly left behind. 2. The ghost of lost freedom. Male freedom has an enormous psychological weight in the construction of identity. When a man marries, he makes a conscious choice to trade certain aspects of that freedom for stability, companionship, and family building. But this exchange only works psychologically when he feels that it was his decision, not an external imposition or a trap from which he can no longer escape. When a woman he is attracted to appears, all that internal negotiation collapses. Suddenly, the freedom he believed he had voluntarily relinquished turns into invisible shackles. He realizes that he cannot act on his impulses. He cannot exploit that connection. He cannot even publicly admit what he is feeling. The freedom that seemed like a conscious sacrifice turns out to be a prison that he cannot leave. The fear intensifies because this attraction makes him question whether he was really ready to give up his freedom when he got married. Did he make this decision maturely, or was he pushed by circumstances, age, pressure from his partner or society? These questions do not have comfortable answers, and the more he's attracted to you, the more claustrophobic your married life seems to become. There is also the terror of realizing that freedom was not just about being with other women, but about having total autonomy over your choices, your time, and your life. Marriage brought responsibilities, expectations, and obligations that now seem overwhelming when compared to the lightness he imagines he would have by his side. It's not necessarily you he wants, but the sense of limitless possibilities you represent. This ghost of lost freedom haunts him because he knows there is no going back. Even if the marriage ended, he carries with him the marks, the responsibilities, and especially the awareness that he made irreversible decisions. Seeing you is like seeing through a window an alternative life where he is still free, still masters his own destiny, can still choose without devastating consequences. And the more attractive this vision, the more unbearable its current reality becomes. If you want to understand why married men hide this fear when they feel attracted to you, and how this fear exposes the shadow they refuse to face, the Jung method is fixed in the first comment. 3. The woman who awakens the sleeping man. Many men enter a state of emotional numbness after years of marriage. It's not that love is necessarily over, but the intensity of feelings decreases, passion turns into comfortable affection, and life becomes a predictable sequence of events. It works on autopilot: work, home, family, obligations, repeat. In this state, he does not question, he does not feel deeply, he just exists. When you appear and awaken intense and involuntary emotions in him, the fear that arises is devastating. Because he realizes that he was half alive, that he had given up feeling certain things, that he accepted a diminished version of himself. This awareness is too painful. It's easier to believe you're fully satisfied than to admit that you've spent years just surviving emotionally. You represent the awakening of what he had buried, the ability to feel butterflies in his stomach, the delicious anxiety before a date, the genuine desire to be interesting to someone. These sensations that he hasn't experienced in years come back with full force, and that's terrifying because it reveals the emotional emptiness he was living in. How to explain to yourself that you were emotionally dead without admitting that your marriage may have been responsible for that death. The fear deepens when he realizes that you are not doing anything extraordinary to provoke these reactions in him. You simply exist, you talk naturally, you smile, and that's enough to make you feel alive again. This means that the problem is not in the lack of external stimuli, but in your inability to fully feel within the marriage. This awareness is destructive because there is no way to undo it. There's also the terror of discovering that he's still capable of intense passion, voracious curiosity, and emotional vulnerability, but not with his wife. He can feel all this for you, a person he has just met, while next to the person he has committed himself to for life, he feels only lukewarmness and predictability. This contrast is brutal and raises questions that are impossible to answer without destroying the structure of your life. The man who was asleep wakes up and realizes that he has wasted years, trapped in an existence without color, without intensity, without real life. And you unintentionally become responsible for showing him the size of your own emotional prison. 4. The fear of being discovered by oneself. Self-knowledge can be a devastating experience when it reveals aspects of ourselves that we would rather keep hidden. When a married man finds himself attracted to another woman, he's not just discovering something about you, he's discovering brutal truths about who he really is underneath the facade of a faithful, committed husband. The greatest fear is not that his wife will discover the attraction, but that he himself will have to admit internally the kind of man he has revealed himself to be. Perhaps he always saw himself as someone of unshakable principles, morally superior, incapable of cheating or even considering another woman. This self-image is critical to your sense of identity and personal worth. When attraction arises, that image completely collapses. He discovers that he is able to lie to himself with frightening ease. He rationalizes attraction as just a friendship, minimizes his own feelings, creates elaborate justifications to stay close to you. This process of self-deception reveals a capacity for psychological manipulation that he did not know he possessed. And if he can lie so well to himself about this, what else has he lied about all his life? The discovery that he is capable of such intense feelings for someone who is not his wife forces him to confront his own nature. Maybe he's not so different from the men he judged for cheating. Perhaps the only difference between him and those he considered weak was the opportunity or courage to act. This realization destroys the sense of moral superiority that underpinned their self-esteem. There is also the terror of discovering that he wants things that completely contradict the values he proclaims. He talks about commitment, loyalty, and family, but secretly fantasizes about freedom, passion, and a different life. This dissonance between what he says he values and what he really wants is unbearable. It means that he built a whole life on lies he told himself. The fear of being discovered by oneself is paralyzing because there is no escape. He may hide the attraction of others. He may even be able to push it away from his life, but he cannot undo the knowledge about his own nature. He now knows that he is capable of intensely desiring another person, of considering betrayal, of putting at risk everything he has built, and that awareness will haunt you regardless of the choices you make going forward. 5. Escape as a mechanism of psychic survival. When fear becomes unbearable, the male mind triggers a primitive defense mechanism, flight. But we're not just talking about physical distancing. We're talking about a full-blown psychological escape that manifests itself in surprising and often hostile ways. The man who showed interest suddenly becomes cold, distant, or even rude with no apparent explanation. This drastic change in behavior does not mean that the attraction has diminished. On the contrary, it usually indicates that it has intensified to the point of becoming too threatening. He realizes that he is losing control over his own feelings, and his only way out is to create insurmountable barriers between you. Hostility works like an emotional wall that protects you from yourself. The fear that motivates this flight is the dread that if he remains close, he will end up doing something irreversible. Every conversation with you, every shared laugh, every moment of genuine connection brings him closer to a line he swore never to cross. Then he runs in the opposite direction, even if it means being unfair or cruel to you. It's a matter of psychological survival. He often actively sabotages any possibility of closeness. He cancels appointments, avoids places where he knows he will find you, answers messages in a dry and discouraging way. To outside observers, he looks crazy or bipolar, but internally, every action of withdrawal is a battle against what he really wants. It's easier to make you believe he doesn't care than to admit how much you affect him. Escape also manifests itself through the complete denial of one's feelings. He convinces himself that attraction never existed, that he imagined everything, that you're not that special. This rewriting of the internal narrative is essential for it to be able to function in the marriage without the overwhelming guilt. If he doesn't admit that he felt something real, then he technically didn't emotionally cheat on his wife. There is a profound tragedy in this process. The more intense the true feelings, the more violent the escape must be. The man who completely disappears from your life without explanation is probably the one who has felt the deepest connection. He knows that he does not have the emotional structure to deal with what you represent, so he needs to completely erase you from his existence. It is the only way to continue living in the illusion that you have control over your own life. 6. The terror of choosing and losing everything. Adult life is made up of choices that eliminate other possibilities, but few choices have the devastating weight of deciding between maintaining a marriage or following an overwhelming attraction to someone else. This dilemma puts man in front of an abyss where any decision results in massive and irreversible loss. If he chooses to stay in the marriage, he needs to bury forever what he feels for you. It is not just giving up a person, but murdering a part of yourself that has woken up and now no longer wants to go back to sleep. He will have to live eternally with the question, what if I had chosen differently? This doubt turns into resentment that contaminates the marriage he chose to preserve. If he chooses to follow the attraction, the consequences are equally devastating. Divorce, family destruction, impact on children, social judgment, financial loss, crushing guilt, and all this for the possibility, not for the guarantee, that with you, it would be better. The risk is terrifying because he is betting his whole life, built on a feeling that can only be an illusion, fueled by novelty and the forbidden. The terror intensifies because he knows that there is no right choice. Whichever path he takes, he will miss something fundamental. By staying in marriage, you lose the chance to live a genuine passion and the possibility of being fully happy with someone you are truly attracted to. Leaving the marriage, he loses stability, the family he built, and possibly the relationship with his children. It is a sentence of guaranteed loss, regardless of the decision. There is also the paralyzing fear that after destroying everything for the relationship with you, you will discover that the intensity was only a product of fantasy and the forbidden. What if the attraction fades when it becomes permissible and everyday? What if he sacrifices everything only to find out that you weren't the answer he was looking for? This risk is paralyzing because there is no way to know in advance. Many men are trapped in this terrifying limbo, unable to choose any direction. They remain in the marriage physically, but emotionally they have already left. They keep you around somehow, feeding the fantasy, but without the courage to make it come true. It's a torturous existence where he's not fully anywhere, just surviving in the gray zone between two possible lives. 7. Attraction as a threat to the constructed identity. Every adult man builds a social and family identity that becomes inseparable from who he believes himself to be. He is the husband of so-and-so, the father of the children, the respectable professional, the reliable friend, the son who formed a family. This identity is not superficial. It completely structures your existence and your place in the world. It is through it that he sees himself and is seen by others. When a forbidden attraction arises, that entire identity is put at risk. If he acts on his feelings, he's not just cheating on his wife, he's betraying the version of himself that he's presented to the world for years. Everyone who knows him will have to mentally rewrite who he is. And he himself will need to rebuild his self-image and his social role from scratch. The fear of this identity deconstruction is paralyzing. He has spent decades building this persona of the family man, the faithful husband, the present father. Admitting attraction to another woman calls into question the authenticity of it all. Could it be that he was always just an imposter playing a role? Was the life he built genuine, or just what was expected of him? The threat extends beyond self-image. Your position in the family and the social circle, even at work, can be affected. We live in a society that still severely punishes men who destroy families, especially when there are children involved. He can lose not only his wife, but friends, professional respect, the trust of his children, the admiration of his parents. Everything that defines you socially can fall apart. There is also the terror that by following this attraction, he will discover that the identity he built was more important than he imagined. What if he desperately needs that sense of being a good husband and father to feel valuable? What if, without this structure, he no longer knows who he is? Family identity can be stifling, but it also offers psychological safety. Destroying it is like demolishing the house where you live with no other place to go. Man is faced with an impossible choice: betray who he feels he is at the moment to remain faithful to the identity he has built, or betray the identity built to be faithful to what he is feeling now. Any choice represents a fundamental betrayal of some essential aspect of oneself, and there is no way to preserve both simultaneously. 8. The psychological price of denial. Denying an intense attraction doesn't make it go away. It just pushes it into the shadows of consciousness, where it continues to exert influence in destructive and unpredictable ways. The man who chooses to completely deny what he feels for you pays a devastating psychological price, even if he never admits it out loud. The first consequence of denial is internal fragmentation. He needs to divide his mind into separate compartments, the part that feels and the part that acts, the party that desires and the part that fulfills obligations. Maintaining these divisions requires constant and exhausting psychic energy. It is like living in a permanent civil war with oneself, where no side can definitively win. Denial also breeds deep resentment, but directed toward the wrong targets. He may begin to resent his wife for being the reason she cannot act on his wishes, even though she is not to blame. It may resent you for existing and provoke feelings he'd rather not have. You can resent your own life, the choices you made, the circumstances that bind you. This diffuse resentment contaminates all areas of your existence. Over time, denial creates a deep disconnection from oneself. To effectively deny such an intense attraction, he needs to emotionally desensitize himself. You can't selectively block just one feeling. When you close yourself off to one emotion, you end up closing yourself off to all of them. He becomes progressively colder, more distant, less capable of genuine intimacy with anyone, including his wife. The highest price may be the loss of authenticity. He starts to live performatively, playing the role of the satisfied husband while internally knowing that he is lying. Every "I love you" said to the wife carries the weight of omission. Every family moment is haunted by the ghost of what he truly desires. He can never be fully present anywhere again because there is always a part of him hidden in the shadows. Denial also fuels increasingly elaborate and distorted fantasies. Because he can't process feelings in a healthy way, they turn into mental obsession. You become idealized in unrealistic proportions in his head. He creates fictional versions of what life would be like by his side, increasingly distant from reality. These fantasies become simultaneous refuge and torment. In the end, the man who denies her attraction doesn't get over her. He just learns to live with the hole she left. He goes on externally, keeps the marriage, fulfills his obligations. But internally, an essential part of him was frozen the moment he had to choose between being true to himself or true to his commitments. And that frozen part never completely thaws again, leaving you perpetually incomplete, divided, and secretly unhappy.